Yeah.
Joelle. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Ugero. Been a long time since I made a video. It's been about 6 months. But I'm very happy and excited that I have Rebecca Joelle with me today. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm really excited for this interview. We're going to get into a lot of good topics. So, for anyone that's not aware of who you are, if you want to give an introduction of yourself and what you specialize in.
Sure thing. I help awakened women transition into the life that they were destined to step into, and I help them collapse timelines in the quantum level in business, love, and life.
So when you talk about quantum quantum realm, like what would you would you say is a good like way of explaining that for someone that's not aware of that?
This is the fun part. Okay, so in my work, I work in the quantum where things are, I like to work fast. I like to have my results are rapid, but they're also sustainable. So you can have evolution in all aspects of your life. In the quantum, I would, for example, one of the tools I use is to get at the core reason to someone's blocks. For example, say we've got a female entrepreneur who is afraid to be visible or seen in her business, or maybe she has blocks to being successful in some way, but she can't quite figure out what that is because it's the subconscious that we don't always have conscious access to, right? So I will basically connect with source, which by the way, we all have access to that. We all have these God-given gifts. I've just practiced at it a little bit more than most people. And I hear those subconscious beliefs that are blocking that from happening, whether it be success or her ability to be visible, be seen in her business. And then I'll hear replacement beliefs. And so with permission, we just shift those in the quantum and it's done. And I think that our society, we have picked up this conditioning that healing has to be hard, that healing has to be linear, and that, you know, or not even just healing, but just like life has to be linear, you know, like you go to college, then you get an entry-level job, and then you marry and you have a white picket fence with 2.5 kids. And then you slowly work your way up the ladder. Like that's very much old paradigm. And we're understanding now that we create our reality in this now moment because we are part of the quantum, right? And so another part I will say about collapsing timelines in the quantum is past life healing. And again, that's kind of a linear concept too, because it's all happening at the same time. It's just a little hard for our brains to comprehend. But I do past life healing. And so, like, for example, if someone comes to me with a fear, a deep fear that doesn't make sense to them, but they've had it their whole life, it's almost always related to past life trauma. And I basically, same thing, I go up to God's source and I see that past life play out in my third eye, like a movie. I'll hear what happened. I'll watch the exchange. Like if a relationship between two people, I'll hear what they're saying to each other. I'll get a sense of what happened in that lifetime. What's the lesson being learned there, basically? And we collapse that by taking it through my karmic process. And then, you know, if it's a relationship, they now feel neutral towards that person because they don't have that baggage, that energetic residue from those past lives. Or, you know, they post a picture of themselves the next day on their business page because they no longer feel afraid of being visible or seen in the public eye. So it's like, that's an example, a couple examples of how I operate in the quantum and make really rapid, sustainable changes.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, so like when you're talking about like linear and quantum, so for me, I've done a little bit of learning about that. So like linear is just like that's how I used to really operate for the most part, was looking at my past and then kind of identifying with it a lot, and then seeing that's like having like a idea of what like I am because of that, like I'm a loser or I'm an idiot or I just hurt people, and then that's my present, and then I just feel like I'm just going to continue on that path. So it's just kind of like my past is my present, and then it's going to be my future, and that's basically it. So it's just like a straight line, very masculine. And then like quantum, if people are unaware of like the double slit experiment, for example, like that just shows like on the quantum level, basically there's infinite possibilities. So just because, yeah, the past was the past doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to be what your future is, because we have the now moment to then be able to create whatever we want and then have access to any sort of possibilities in the future. So it's very
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
liberating kind of thing to look at.
Yeah, but it's a stretch for our minds because, you know, like you said, the double slit experiment, it's a wave, right? They're all waves until you focus on something and then it changes form or it solidifies, like that frequency solidifies because that's what you are focusing on. But, you know, we are constantly bombarded by, you know, the world that we're in and the inflation and the wars and the genocide, you know, the issues at a bigger level, but also at a, you know, on our day-to-day lives. You know, we maybe have relationship problems or we're not making enough money to pay the bills, like, or, you know, we have to put our kids in school and we're not entirely happy about that because of how the school system is set up based on like prison system. Um, and we see this 3D reality play out in front of us, right? And so it takes effort, faith, trust, surrender to be able to focus on a different wave, like kind of be delusional because, and really not pay attention and focus, like when you said about the conditioning, probably you picked up from childhood. You could have picked it up in childhood, but it's also being reinforced on a subconscious level. Like, oh, I'm just like this. And anytime you say that, you're solidifying that frequency more and more, right? Because that's what you focus on, because that's your reality. And like, really, like all of us do that to some degree. So, yeah.
Yeah, and even at the time, that was like 2014 when I was really like starting to kind of pick up on. It seems like I'm doing a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like I was even kind of aware of it at that time without having
We
any
all
sort
are.
of. Yeah, so without having like any sort of like esoteric information or anything about like the quantum and all that stuff, I was already kind of having enough intuition to sense that's what kind of what I was doing. I just didn't know a way out of it. But so like all this is really interesting. So like for yourself personally, what got you started on this path? Was it something that you're already kind of interested in? Did you already have a good amount of like intuition to start, or like what was it that really got you like propelled into this sort of field?
Well, like most people, I didn't listen until I got hit by a spiritual 2x4 block over the head. Not to lie to the situation, but we all came here to learn certain lessons. And I was actually in an abusive marriage, like abusive, like in so many ways. And I fled abusive marriage in November 2016 with two little kids in tow. I am such a completely different person now. It's amazing the journey that I'm on, and that's what it's like further proof that like this work is not linear. But when I left that situation, you know, as anyone knows, when they go through something like that, they go kind of internal. You know, if they're willing to face their shadow and figure out why did that happen? How could I get myself into this mess? Like I consciously chose this person because I believed that wouldn't happen. You know, like what was the deal here? So I went down this path of like really felt called internally to find my purpose because I also felt blocked to my intuition. Even though as a psychic, you know, I had psychic abilities as a child. But I spent the majority of my life in the company of people who gaslit me, used me, betrayed me, lied to me, and always felt off. But I was used to that because that's what I was surrounded by energetically in my childhood home as well. So that was kind of a tipping point, leaving my abusive marriage abruptly. And I just sought to find my purpose. I had some healing done by, I learned about human design. Actually, that was the first trigger point for me. And that it helped me to become more aware of my gut. And I have a sacral authority. I'm a generator, and you know, it's just another system, but I feel like it really helped me to learn to tap into my body, because I feel like a lot of women are disembodied, and that is why they are not connected to their intuition. They choose the wrong men. They don't feel worthy. They don't feel deserving, and then they experience blocks to success. It's like a whole thing, right? But I basically met with a naturopathic doctor. One of the first few sessions, he told me I had a spell or a curse on me, and I'm like, well, I spent the wrong money on the wrong, you know, my money on the wrong doctor. But several friends had referred me to him, and I was like, well, let's play this out. And in that process of working with him, I went to him to find my purpose, like a doctor, not for health issues. But then you know, all this unraveling and all these tools that I now use in my own practice with clients, and I've done it for years now, I realized that a lot of my awakening process was realizing and sensing that I picked up energetic imprints from other people, and that influenced my way of being in this world, like my access to my intuition, my self-trust, my embodiment. So yeah, that was my journey. And then I think it started happening in 2019. I started waking up. I started recalling past lives in my waking state. I was channeling from source and being able to see into someone else's house that I had never seen before and know exactly, I see them, like a girl came to me, a friend, all upset over her breakup. As she's talking to me, source is communicating through me. In the beginning, probably one of the reasons why I stayed with this work is because I would literally have full body orgasms. Like whenever I did this work, like talk about a reward, for me to keep going. But like it would just go through me and it just like, whoa. And there was no, I knew that this was truth, like with a capital T moving through me, and then I saw it on my third eye. I heard the message and I delivered it. Then I started having spirits connecting with me, that I was able, that I had mediumship abilities, which I guess I had as a child. So everything just like opened up and it's just evolved since then. And of course, now I help women access their intuition and those gifts. And I've helped people heal in all kinds of ways, because at the root of most of it is like not being connected to their divinity, helping them to remember their connection to divinity. And this isn't like a religious like perspective at all. And at the root of it is like a lack of worth, a lack of like not feeling good enough is really at the root of most things I see, whether it's someone who has like parasites, whether it's someone who has blocks to saving money, or they're not attracting the right people, aligned clients in their business, they're not attracting healthy partners. Like it's often at the root of it is like they're forgetting who they are, on a soul level.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really, really good. And like when you're one of the main things that stuck out was when you're saying like becoming aware of your gut. So like a lot of people say like that's where a lot of intuition comes from, is from your gut. And if you're not listening to your gut, you're basically not listening to your body. And that's creating
Mm-hmm.
some sort of like block internally within
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So like even with me, like that's one of the reasons why I wasn't making any content for 6 months, was because I would talk about shadow work and trauma work, but I wasn't acting on it myself. I would talk about it, and then I would even mention in my videos as I'm live that I myself am still needing to work on this stuff myself. And so I was a broken record. I was noticing that I'm not going to get a lot of respect from people if I continually talk about it and not do it. So that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been until now that I am feeling like I can do interviews and stuff, because
Mm-hmm.
I have like removed like drugs. I've been doing a lot more meditation, going outside, doing grounding. Um, yeah, like I'm definitely not as lustful as I used to be. I'm actually kind of pretty content being alone. I have made some like relationships with like women, but it hasn't been where I'm thinking about anything like intimate in that sense. It's been just a whole different like ball game for myself, and just being able to like go outside like at nighttime, just cry, let things out, and just get more comfortable being in that sense. And then I've also been taking things that help with like your third eye activation, like decalcifying your pineal gland, like ginkgo biloba. And then I'm taking like a tea that helps with like dreams. It's got like a blue lotus in it, tulsi, kava, skullcap, ashwagandha. So I've been trying to do a lot more things that are like just better for myself, do a lot more fulfilling things. Um, and I think, yeah, people just really need to be able to sit with themselves and be able to listen a lot more and not be in their head as much in the masculine. So I think
Yeah.
that's very, very important.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that it's not just about the gut, right? Like, I feel like so much of this is like coming back to our hearts. That's scary for most people. And I feel like that's an epidemic, like having a closed heart society. Um, because that's where our truth is. Like that is where, when I connect with source, that's where I start. I connect in with my heart. When I connect with people who have quote unquote crossed over, I feel it in my heart. When I feel when I post to social media, like I post from my heart, and I don't mean the physical, I mean our soul like resides, it's a frequency. And it's not just the gut, it really is the heart. And I feel like some of it, like what you're talking about, like being able to allow, to cry, and men are allowed to do that too, and unfortunately we've got these like masculine, feminine polarity, dynamic communication that's putting even more burden on men, saying that they should be able to handle their feelings on their own. And I just feel like that's really toxic and unhelpful, and it's creating more problems. But I think that we're, finding our way back to unity within ourselves, whatever that looks like, before we can bring someone else into the equation. But the big part of it is that heart healing. And no matter what kind of childhood you have, all of us have some kind of inner child healing to do so that we can really feel worthy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have most of the population in, toxic, unhealthy, unhappy relationships, or they wouldn't be in jobs that they don't like if they were really tapped in here,
Yeah, and that's something that I need to still work on. Like so many people kick the can down the road, and I was doing the same thing. I was like doing smoking like weed. I was playing a lot of video games, just distracting myself, and I would feel it in my just in my body. Like I know that this is not going to help me. This is just a band-aid. It's not really working for me. I had enough self-awareness at that time to even understand it then, but it's just like the dopamine addiction. So many people are addicted to their phones and just distractions and just constant busy work instead of really taking the time to like you're saying, like it definitely comes down to the heart too. I did do a quantum healing session with this gentleman Odysseus, who you've interviewed, and like my root chakra, my sacral, and then my heart were like almost completely closed, which made a ton of sense. Like with the whole lusting stuff, I was like a porn addict also, like back in the day, and I still had battles with it, but just like the lust aspect, and then also like the heart from being hurt and then hurting other people and just having a constant block in that sense. It definitely helped open things up. Like I remember like we were like looking at my chakra. I was like paying attention to my chakras after he did like the clearing, and just all of a sudden I just started busting like out into like massive tears. Like I don't even know where it was coming from logically, but I knew that it was coming from somewhere subconsciously or unconsciously. And then all of a sudden I started cracking up. I started laughing uncontrollably for some reason, just like from one to the other. And it was a really nice release. And yeah, it's just like it's so like even me doing shadow work previously, like a few years back, um, I knew how valuable it was, but I was still like distracting myself and not wanting to look at things because it was uncomfortable. But it really is not that difficult, like you were mentioning, like in the very beginning, because it's just about stacking a couple days on top of one another, and then it really just gets easier as you go because then you get more comfortable not being with like a TV or a computer or a bunch of videos. Like you're actually able to do things without having any sort of distractions, and you start to
Yeah.
get comfortable, and like your mind starts to rewire itself in a different way. Because I used to be so addicted to dopamine, and my brain was not working properly. I had a lot of brain fog. So like as the days went on, like I just felt a lot better. And like especially like removing like the drugs, like I was taking kratom here and there. I was doing like weed every day. It was like homegrown, but either way, like it's not good to abuse it. And so like my energy levels started like kind of like it was kind of bad at first. Like I was really tired, but then I kind of got a little bit better, and I just got used to not having that stuff like stimulants and all that. So really it's just about having that willpower just to get through the first couple days, and then just sitting and listening, not really
Yeah.
being in your mind as much. So so like we've kind of already kind of got into this, but why is healing our inner wounds so very important? Not just for ourselves, but just like the people around us and our relationships and whatnot.
Well, I think you kind of told a story about that, and it's really experiential too, because like you said, with the sex thing, it's like you can have the focus on instant gratification and it can be pleasurable locally, but you have no idea like what you're missing when you are actually like fully in your body and you've cleared the energies from past partners, which is a thing, like I help people clear that. And that's part of the root chakra and the sacral chakra, that you're carrying other people's wounds along with your own, when you're intimate with them. And so, that's a class that I need to get to, teaching people how to clear their field of past partners. When you have what I call junk food sex, you don't know what you're missing, until you experience it. You're like, what the hell was I settling for, all before? And this isn't about positions or, who you're with, really. It's about like I mean, it's cosmic. That's how I describe it, because you're in your heart, you're anchored there, your vessel is clear so it can go through your channel, all of your chakras channel, and up to infinite, you know? And so it's just a completely different experience. And then you have that love, but then you've got to be able, that open heart. If you've got the closed heart down and you're having junk food sex, it's like people don't know what they're missing, you know, if they haven't experienced the alternative. So I mean, what are the benefits for healing? Cosmic sex is one of them. And being able to fully embrace and embody your authentic self. And that sounds like cliche, but it's like, if you're not fully in like your authentic space, you're going to be attracting other people who are not in their authentic space. So it's like all these fake friendships and connections and relationships that make no sense. You know, you're fooling yourself and they're fooling themselves and you're fooling each other. I mean, it's kind of a tangled mess, to be honest. So with the healing, it's really just like and it's layers, you know, the job is never done. I mean, how many lifetimes have we put back on this, you know, orbiting planet, you know, to experience our karma and to learn lessons and all the things. So, I mean, there's layers to it. It's not like it's going to take like, you know, I mean, I've done more healing than most people. I mean, it's what I do. I do it for other clients and I do it for myself. And yet this year, like I had this big awareness of the fact that you know, I had to be more courageous and stepping more into my authentic self and letting the people fall away who just didn't get it, you know, because they will. When you step into your authentic self, you're going to attract more authentic connections. You're going to have to be okay with letting people go who are not aligned anymore, because as you change your frequency, people vibrate out of your life.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense to me. And that's the thing. Like a lot of people have like relationships with people where they just talk about movies or this, and like sporting events, but it's just really superficial. It's not really getting down to like the soul level, like you were saying, like embodying your authentic self. And yeah, like seeing how people just fall away. Like for me personally, I don't have that many friends anymore, just because I mean, I
That's
don't
part
want
of
to
the
put my time and
process.
energy
Yeah.
into people that like it's not really I can't really express myself in the way that I really want to, based on what I value and like the things that I want to do with my life. So like that's also what's been good about me being okay being alone, because like I can wait for somebody to come along where like we click a lot more, and I can actually talk with them about like spiritual stuff, or like especially if they know a lot about that stuff. I love learning from other people, so it's always good to have those kind of connections that are actually like authentic. So that makes a
Yeah, and
lot
I
of
think
sense.
well, I think with the pandemic, one of the functions of that, in the benefits, not the functions, the benefit was putting us all in a timeout, so to speak, you know, and a lot of people connected online and were able to find their connections that way. I know that was the way for me. In this journey, it's like I'm constantly evolving and I see this, and then people will fall away, you know, and I mean, I had to be really courageous in sharing certain messages that I knew to be true because I connect with source, and then I get hate from other people, and I've got to be okay with like, okay, you're being blocked, you are being deleted, like we are not aligned. Whereas before, I would have wanted to make sure everyone was happy. Like that's where I lived, you know, when I wasn't making myself happy because I was so worried about what everyone else was going to think.
Yep, and that's something that I'm I'm still struggling with, um, is trying to make everyone happy. Like just trying to word things in a certain way. Like, am I gonna get like someone to get pissed off by me saying this or not? There are some instances where I really don't care and I will say what I want to say, but there are a lot of times where I still really think about how other people perceive me, and that really comes back to my childhood as well, like being really self-conscious, not having a lot of uh, not being as confident in myself. So like that's something I still need to work through and whatnot. And then yeah, like so like with the inner work, does somebody need to see a specialist in order to make a breakthrough, or are there times where maybe in your own personal life, or maybe someone that you know, were they able to do something within themselves without having to see someone that specializes in a certain
Well,
thing or not?
I think to your credit, to the last thing that you mentioned about your childhood stuff, I mean, we have a tribal mentality and we have lifetimes of that like embedded in ourselves. And so it's very scary to step away from the tribe. So that's deeply embedded in us. And then we're going to go along with what everyone else is doing, even though it doesn't feel right. So using your intuition is an act of rebellion, 100%, and as far as people needing a specialist, no. I mean, I had these like huge breakthroughs, and like I said, quantum breakthroughs. Like all of a sudden I was having prophetic dreams, and I was having all these experiences that no one around me could relate to. And I had to write it out alone. No one helped me with that. But I do think there is a place for it. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this work. I feel like we all have blind spots. And, some of us act like angels, when there's something from someone, you're like, or you read a book or you see a class and you're like, that's what I needed to hear. Like it was at the right time. If you would have heard it like 2 years ago, it would have just passed right by you, but like we are always mirrors to each other reflecting back. Or I just feel like, especially with children too, like it just feels like angels are whispering into their ears, to say something. And then you're like, I mean, I can feel the frequency of words and things. So it's just like, whoa. So there's a benefit to it, but you can also like get there. But I think we're all there to help each other along. It's like we're all helping each other find our way home, right? So it's like I find people who are quote unquote behind me, like a few steps behind me, who maybe don't know how to use their intuition, who want to, embody their masculine and their feminine. Maybe they're women who've got their heart locked down behind a big wall and they're too guarded and they're too much in their masculine, and now they want to step more into their feminine. Well, I've already walked that path. So let's go, let's partner together and get you there faster. So, because I've been there and I can help you through it. And I've got the skills to be able to like collapse things so that they can get there quicker and more gently too. It's not like I'm wham bam, but I feel like my personal belief is that healing can be miraculous. It can be instant. And that goes against the grain of what most people think. They're like, oh, I need to see someone in person. No, you don't. Like I've worked with people in 22 countries at this point. I've taken someone from feeling suicidal in one call, many people actually, from feeling suicidal to nothing's wrong with them, like in an hour and a half. And a lot of the time it was from drugs. It was from energies that they picked up from other people. It's energetic stuff. Like they're just, imagine like your aura and garbage all around your aura. That's weighing you down. It makes you feel depressed, not good enough. Then you keep doing the drugs, but the drugs put holes in your aura and allow entities to come in. So our healthcare system doesn't really talk about that. And they're, so that's why people come to me, because they're like, I haven't found anything that works. Like, I mean, it was my journey to find my purpose, but also like, I felt like I realized I was like chronic PTSD, because abuse in childhood, abuse in my marriage. And that was my normal, my baseline. I didn't even realize I was anxious, but now I know, like someone's thinking about me. I know, like I have the thought in my head. I know when they're thinking about me. I know when someone's trying to latch onto me. I know when someone's attacking me. I feel it instantly and I can clear it. And we all need those tools, because we brush our teeth, right? We exercise, we healthy, we take the tea to help us sleep better. We take, we try not to have fluoride in our water so we can have better access to our third eye, like all the different things. But then not many people are using energy hygiene they're interacting with people all the time, not just in person, but electronically. And then what are they picking up, and oftentimes it's because they've got past lives with that person. Or let's not go down the trail, but there's so many reasons. But that's just one thing that like I really have benefited from. So I'd like to share more of that, because I don't think enough people are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that makes a lot of sense, because like when you're talking about like being able to know when someone's thinking about you and all that stuff, like for me myself, sometimes I get like the chills, or sometimes like I think about somebody and then I text them like, oh, I was just thinking about you too. And it's like, oh, okay, well, like what a coincidence, when it's really not. But it's about tapping into that, because then it's like muscle memory. You'll just be able to, over time, be able to work that muscle out, and then be able to know with a lot more certainty, like that this is happening or that's happening, instead of it just being where it's like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that I was picking up on you, maybe thinking about me at the same time. So like that's where it's like really crazy, because like the whole quantum aspect, like the quantum healing, being able to like to like access people's energy from a distance is just nuts. Like people would just say, like, oh, that's just woo woo and that's just made up and that's just phony baloney. But I personally experienced it myself, and it's really, really interesting. And it's just like the amount of information that we just don't know about, like the whole esoteric, like the hidden knowledge that's not really hidden. It's just that we're not looking into it, or like dissuade from looking into it. Oh, it's just all evil stuff. No, it's not really. It's you can use it for like to take advantage of somebody if they aren't aware of it, but you can also use it to help other people if they aren't aware of it. If you have like that benevolence instead of the malevolence.
Right.
That's very, very interesting. And so like for me, like being able to like me taking a lot of these supplements to help out with my third eye, I've definitely noticed a difference. I feel a lot more access to this as I'm like doing a like central channel breathing and just trying to clear my center. And I can definitely feel this working a lot more, but it's just about just working on it more. Like doing like thinking about like imagining colors for like your
Yes.
chakras and all that stuff. And I'm kind of getting into that a little bit. Before, like when I was like smoking weed, like I was able to do it a little bit better because just being high, I guess, with the colors and stuff. But now I'm able to tap into that a little bit more. But it's just work. It's just doing it on a daily basis and just doing like a daily practice in some form. Um, so for yourself, like what would be some cool tools for people to utilize? Like, is there like certain breath technique or meditation technique, or is there anything that you do like on a daily basis that really helps you get centered, especially like maybe in like a fight or flight situation when you're getting anxious or anything like that?
Well, if I am getting anxious, I know that I've picked up energy from someone else, because otherwise I'm pretty cool, calm, collected. So that's my clue that I'm like, well, I mean, I just do it really quickly right now. But for anyone who's listening, I would say if you feel anxious, I would ask like, why do I feel anxious? Like, is it from this conversation? Is it from this person? Is it from and just kind of ask these questions and then tune in individually like that. I think that's really helpful to like find out, where is the anxiety? Where do I feel it in my body? To help with embodiment. And I have, as far as energy hygiene, I have a free cord cutting tool on my website, and that's a basic tool that everyone should be using. When you are, and you could use it every day, like before you go to bed, when you wake up. I don't use it every day anymore because I can sense my energy. But certainly, if I'm releasing stuff on social media and I start to feel my back hurting or something, I know I've been attacked. And that is my level of awareness in this phase of my evolution. Maybe in a few years from now, I won't be talking about this, but this has been so tremendously helpful, knowing these tools since the beginning of my awakening. So I would say the cord cutting, and basically what I mean by that is that we connect with people when we're interacting with them, like us right now. With my clients, I do cord cutting before and after my sessions. If you're going to work with any healer, I would absolutely make sure that they have an energy hygiene practice in place, because otherwise you're going to be walking around with their energy after session. That's not really going to do you much good, and they will be walking around with yours. Like, there are so many healers and practitioners out there that don't have a practice in place, and you could be having the greatest session, but if they don't use energy hygiene tools, 2 days later, you're feeling depressed and you don't know why the hell you're spiraling. And it's because you're still connected to that healer, So we connect with people energetically when we're intimate with each other, and it doesn't physically, but it also can be like sending an email to someone. I mean, has anyone ever experienced, like, you're driving along and someone cuts you off? How does that feel in your body? And then maybe they get sick 2 days later with a cold, and they don't realize it's because that person affected their energy space, in some shape or fashion. So I don't think we're really there yet with understanding how we affect each other. We're starting to understand the quantum level, like, oh, we're powerful creators, we're powerful manifestors, but we're also affecting each other's energies. Most of the time it's quite sloppy. So I would say the cord cutting tool would be the tool that I would say for a basic level starting piece. And then I'd also say, if your listeners can learn how to muscle test, that would help with embodiment. And I go over that in my energy hygiene course with other things, but they might be able to find like a solid YouTube video or something like that on learning how to muscle test. That will get you more in your body and more in your intuition. What I mean by muscle test is like you're standing up. I would recommend the sway test. You can do it with your fingers, but I think that's hard for a beginner. And I've gotten away from like I mostly don't use it anymore, but I certainly started out with that just to test like a yes or no for things. Is it in the highest best good for me to go for a walk right now or go for a swim? You know, like that's a basic thing, you know, or is it my highest and best good to have this client, have this person as my client, you know, or is it in the highest and best good for me to have this conversation with this person today or to wait on it? You know, just like different decisions. And then you start to feel it in your body more and more, you know? So I think that would help both the embodiment piece, so many people are disembodied, and connecting with their intuition.
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah, God, I'm so not used to being on an interview anymore. I forgot to wind it out when I'm talking too. Um, Yeah, like the muscle test, I heard about that from this gentleman that I'm friends with, and at first I was like, "What?" And I was like, "That's just so weird." But then I've heard it a few times already, and it makes a lot of sense. And so that's kind of like what we were talking about before, is just like building your muscle in that sense of
Yes.
being able to, because then you can feel it more. You don't really have to do that as much because you'll be able to just sense it. Oh, okay, yeah, this isn't a good idea, or yeah,
Right,
I might as well
right.
just postpone it. So
Mhm.
that's excellent. And then like the energy hygiene practice, that's really excellent. So that's something I'm definitely gonna check out on your website and give that a look and try that out myself as well. And then like I've heard about like sage, like burning sage. Is that something like that people should do like all the time? And when you're burning sage, I heard that like, it clears out the room, but it kind of leaves it kind of empty. Is there something you should burn with it, like rosemary or something like that, to also like maybe clear out the energy if like you're maybe in maybe in the household with somebody that you don't really like, but you don't really have any other options. So like you can at least try to make the best of it while you're there.
Yeah, I feel like I mean that's a portable option, right? It's simple, it's expensive, less, you know, it doesn't cost a lot of money, it doesn't cost a lot of like skill, right? So and it's accessible to most people. So I think but it's more like a first tier level way. Like I would use that to clear a room, but like I would use my other tools also. But I also see things. Like I know um you know, that sage and an Epsom salt bath is not going to remove entities. You know, it's not going to remove ghosts, and that's something that I've worked with, which is the thing. I've worked with all kinds of metaphysical stuff, you know, and it's good for clearing a room for sure. Like if you know, for any of your listeners out there, and they're like, "What the heck is she talking about? This is so woo woo." But like everyone has been in, like, go into a hospital. How do you feel going into a hospital? You know, now go into the forest. How do you feel going into the forest? You know, you have the trees there, you have the birds, it's quiet, there's no one around, there's no cars, there's no roads. Like, how does that feel compared to being in a courthouse or a hospital? Like, different places have different level, you know, energies. And when you go to a hospital, when I see it now, there's a gray cloud, a dense cloud of anxiety, fear, stress. It's there. I see it. But that's what we feel. We have our own anxiety when we got to go to a doctor, we got to get test results on a health thing. But you don't realize is that you're picking on the stress of everyone else in that environment. When you go in there, you're walking into this like stressful, fear-based soup. So, you know, the other thing you could do, I would say, this more important, this, I mean, the sage is good for just clearing a room. Sorry, I'm like rambling here, but put white light, intentionally envisioning that around you when you go into spaces like that, or when you're going to have a difficult conversation, and calling on your guides, whatever that is, you know, and for the highest and best good. Like before we got onto this podcast, I'm talking to my guides, I'm talking to my higher self for the highest and best good of all, that messages come through me with ease, that the people are here that need to hear this message are inspired, that they're led to the next right step, you know, all that, like putting intention into the things that you're doing instead of just doing things. I don't know if that helps, but transition come through. Yeah.
Yeah, and like when you're talking about having the intention, it's something like similar to what I was mentioning when we're off air. It's just like being observant, like being in the moment and not just like blindly doing stuff just to do it. Like, oh yeah, like maybe people are gonna view this, they might be inspired, yada yada yada. But like they actually have that intention and to really put that out there. Um, and then that's actually something I used to do as a kid. Like I still do it. Like there'd be times where I would think about something, and then for me, it didn't seem like it was official unless I said it. So like for me, like I would have to say something.
That's wave again, right? And I feel like that's a masculine energy too. It feels like I'm putting in stakes here. This land is mine, you know, kind of
Yeah.
the intention. It's the wave coming into form. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, so so for me, one thing that kind of piqued my interest was when you were like talking about ghosts. So like for me, like I haven't had like any experiences, thankfully, like because normally I'd probably be scared. I'd probably be super scared if I saw something or interacted with something like that. But like, what's your thought on that? Because I know that people talk about like past lives, but then like there's also like the whole ghost aspect. So like if we have past lives and we get like reincarnated and we come back around, then what are the ghosts? Are they like, do they have like a choice to stay or to come back
So
around or?
yeah, so when I see, I'll show you a couple different examples. Well, most of the time when I someone comes to me for like an energy clearing, and a ghost comes up, often it's often a person in their family that's passed away, that's believing the ghost. I mean, I converse with ghosts. I know this sounds weird, but I just do this. I converse with the ghosts as to like, why are you here? What do you know? They think they're here on purpose. They think they're helping the person. You know, they're looking out for the person. They think I'm getting chills. They're doing it for good. You know, they're just looking out for that person. Most of the time it's that. But they are affecting my client in the way that my client feels confused. They feel anxious. They don't know their purpose. There's some confusing energy because there's not just one of them in their field. They've got this other person hanging out in their field. So it's basically they're trapped in, like, I basically send them back to source. They've just been confused. And the other situation I will say is, it's what do I say? The client, it's not in their highest and best good to have a ghost in their field. Grandpa thinks he's doing a favor, he's not, and he's kind of gotten lost along the way, basically. And so I send him back to source. And, I had another example where I had, which story shall I tell? Okay, so I'll tell the story about my client who is in England, and she's a healer and she has her own tools, right? She was like going to bed at night and feeling the ghosts touching her. And it goes even deeper than this. Like, there is another type of, I think it's called incubus. I don't think I will get in the details, but they basically physically engage with you in intimate ways. But that's separate from a ghost. But that is a thing. I've had people come to me for that. But in this situation, she got so scared because she kept getting touched, and like she knew that they were housed, and she tried to clear them and she couldn't. But I knew it's because she didn't fully embody, like, she was scared, right? And I'm not scared. I've just dealt with this before. And so I looked at her house. I remote view. I remote view as in, like, I basically have an oracle antenna, and I just point it to whatever I'm focusing on, and I see things, I hear things, feel things as if I'm there. I remote viewed her house I don't need pictures or anything. I just see, the house, and I see there's like 7 ghosts in her house. And then I'm like, I know that from their energy, they don't want to have a conversation with me. They're just trying to push those people out, my friend and her family, because they feel like this is our territory, this is our land, they've invaded it. It was that kind of energy. And I'm like, fine, I'm not talking with you. We're going to source here. And I communicated with source. I heard hiking, and it was like this whole energy of them trying to protect their space. And this was their place and no one else. It was, typical movie story that you see, right? Where this is trying to defend their territory. So I basically, at that point, just like looked at the room, and I can see the ghosts in the room, different places. And I just come them to the light, and, in my way that I do. And, but it's the energy in which I do it. My friend tried to do the same thing, but it didn't work. But me, it's like, my whole energy is saying, get the F out. Like, go to source, like, that's it, we're done. No discussion. And then they're done. And then I remote view, I see the house is clear and she's no more problems. Like, one more story I will share, where this guy, his job was to clean up crime scenes. And he actually had 2, and I didn't know this about him when he worked with me. I just like did this clearing, and I'm like, you have 2 ghosts on you. I'm like, I've never found more than 1 ghost on someone. I'm like, can you tell me a little bit more about why that might be the case? And then he told me he cleaned up crime scenes. So it was that lingering energy where they latched onto him. So it just creates confusion, anxiety in the person's body, and they don't know why. And it sounds crazy, but like, we're not just this, skin and bones meat suit here. There are things going on that we don't see with our eyes. So yeah, those are some of my ghost stories. I guess I'm a ghostbuster.
That's crazy. Like for me, like I would be like your friend. I'd be scared to death if I was getting touched by something. Oh man.
There are scarier things than that. The
Yeah, I'm
truth is
sure.
scarier than the stuff in the yeah. Anyway, I don't go down that path, but there are scarier things than that. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. So in terms of like any sort of resources for people, has there been any sort of like books or like maybe videos that you would personally recommend? So like for myself, I would say for people that are interested, like The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. I read that. It was suggested to me by my therapist at the time in 2015. And it basically talks about like meditation and just being observant without really even using the word meditation at all. So it's just like ways of taking your thoughts and seeing them for what they are, like being able to zoom out and not just be in the trenches and thinking these things, or I'm an idiot or whatever. You can say, oh, at this moment, I'm having this thought that I'm an idiot, or like putting like a celebrity's voice to it to make it to separate yourself from it, or singing it.
Nice.
And then it helps you kind of detach yourself from that. So like that's a really good book. There's also this other good book, or the one by Odysseus Andrianos, which is Shadow Awakening, The Dawn of Human Potential. That one was really, really good. I still have
I
yet to
haven't
go
read
through
his
like the
book.
actual questions, but yeah, it's
He's
good.
awesome.
It's
He's on my
yeah,
podcast. Yeah.
and then like it's also like a workbook at the same time. And I haven't done the questions yet, but I'm definitely wanting to go back a second time to do that. But so like for yourself, what are some like books or maybe recommendations that you would suggest to people that are maybe interested in doing like some
I
more
mean,
personal shadow work?
yeah, no, I think it's shared with people. And I've read like hundreds of books, and I should have a list somewhere. Like the two that come to mind that I've got copies of in my library, so that's saying something. Anatomy of the Spirit, and I've read that a few times, and it teaches me something new each time. And she actually mentions, I was reading it during the pandemic, and she talked about the root chakra there in the pandemic. But this was before we had the pandemic, so it was so enlightening to me to read that, and that's something I would go back to again and again. And then Heal Your Life, I think that's a really good one to identify. It's a starting point, I would say. Like if you, like certain issues with our body will reflect certain things. Like there's no accidents. It doesn't start off like cancer, right? It starts off because you were told that you weren't good enough as a child and you endured child abuse, like breast cancer, or like it starts off as it's not, cancer is not the root of it. Like the root of it is the frequency where it started. It's a feeling of not good enough. It's feeling not worthy, not lovable, all the things. That is the root of it. And that's why you see so many people come out of their cancer stories, and they needed it to rise above, to learn more about themselves, to love themselves. So the Heal Your Life, we'll talk about like different symptoms and the possible root causes. So I think that's a starting point to that. But I would say, a lot of people, these days we've got a lot on our plate, and we've got short attention spans. I don't know that many people are reading like they used to. They want like 10-second video to tell them everything. So I would say like, theta healing was what I learned how to connect with source, and that was life-changing for me. And everyone can do that probably without even taking the course, but it helped me, just the beginning one. I didn't realize I could see into someone's body. There's some conscious beliefs and like see past life. I mean, that's what was part of my awakening, the theta healing. And then, just one thing, my kids talk about this a lot, is like just putting your hand on a tree when you're out in the woods and just say, what message do you have for me right now? And then allow your mind to not have any thought, for 10 seconds. Like I think everyone can do that, and just see what comes through. And you're not talking to a tree, you're talking to source, but it kind of do that bridge.
That's very interesting because I was just walking, what was it, yesterday or the day before? And I just felt like the urge to put my hand on the tree when I was walking by. And I didn't do what you said, which was like, do you have any message for me? But I was doing that. I was putting my hand on it. So it's kind of course, it's not that much of a coincidence that you mentioned that, of course. But perfect. So then, oh yeah, another one that I would recommend, Derek Bros. It's called the Holistic Self Assessment, and that one's really, really small. So for people that have like short attention spans and want to kind of get through something pretty quick and say, hey, I read a book, that one's pretty short. So it talks about like holistically, like how to kind of view yourself and ways of like moving past like certain traumas and stuff like that. And
Well,
that's one of the key things. Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, one book I just came into my awareness recently was the Metaphysical Anatomy. I mean, it's not for most people because it's really thick, but it's interesting. Like when I work with a client, I'm focusing on them and what I hear from source, you know, but much of what she's saying in the Metaphysical Anatomy, like you have a certain issue, it's way more in depth. It will tell you like what's at the root cause of that. Like, I don't know, you gotta check that out. Like if you're really into the healing path, like of course I have it because I work with lots of clients with lots of different issues, but that one's amazing, I know, and spot on.
Perfect. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm definitely writing those down. So I'm gonna check those out. So for yourself, so you solely work with women, correct?
It's interesting how my business is always evolving. So I work with women in a 6-month container primarily right now, the Quantum Catalyst. So I love going deep with women because I was doing these one-off sessions and realizing they weren't as satisfying to me. So, you know, women often come to me and they want to work on business, but then it opens up to let's work on relationships, let's work on this. And it, you know, the layers that come healing. So I work primarily in the 6-month container, but I've also had a lot of traction on some controversial videos I've shared on TikTok and YouTube, and people have reached out to see if I could do readings. So I brought those back into play right now because I love doing them, and so that's what I'm doing right now for folks. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So like reading, you're talking about like tarot.
No, I don't use tarot. I basically just connect with source, and I, you know, have the person's first name. That's all I need. Don't need pictures or birth dates or anything. And I just I have their question. I go up to source and I say, okay, so, you know, I say to source, this is their question. And then I'm writing down pages of answers based on what I'm hearing from source. It's very thorough, very detailed. It's not like any reading. I don't use tarot or anything. I mean, tarot's fun. I've got tarot card decks and oracle card decks. They're fun to look at. I get so much, and I just hear it, like, and I'll be writing down pages and then I share that with people. And that's what I did recently. I'm not sure I should share, but on my TikTok and YouTube, the videos have gone viral, and I did it for, to kind of peek into a situation at a higher level, because I usually just use my gifts for my own life and for my clients. But yeah, I just basically connect with source, and I hear the messages and then I share them. Yeah.
Wow. So how has the reception been on that? Has, like, for people that were asking specifically, like, and then you give them the answers, did they say, wow, this was totally relevant, or like maybe like you were also catching things that like they weren't even thinking about, or was it where people were like, oh, that's simply
my readings are spot on, and I've been doing them since my awakening. And it's funny because my my son was 5 years old at the time, and I was having my awakening, and I was like, well, how he was connecting to a dragon. And I mean a true dragon, like a dragon, like in another dimension. I knew this, but I also wanted to test him because he would basically connect in with his dragon every day. It was so sweet, 5 years old. And to test him and his connection, I asked him, what does your dragon say that mommy's going to do for money, for business, for career? And he closes his eyes for a few seconds, and then he looks at me and he says, prophecy work. He's like, mommy, what's prophecy mean? And just like total chills. And he, you know, I feel like we all have that gift. And so he was already sharing with me. And then I started doing the readings right after he said that. You know, I was guided to do that for people all over the world. Like, I can see that in my third eye. I hear the messages. It's the same thing when I see their past lives. I can see what happened. Like, if someone comes to me with issues, sometimes I can see, or I can see, but I will be called to see how the environment was when they were in the womb of their mother. And I can hear the conversations that their parents are having outside the womb and how the baby internalized that. Like, that's what I mean by pointing my antenna. Like, I basically just like go somewhere and where I'm guided, and I see and feel how that's impacting that person. Does that make sense? Sort of?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, sort of, yeah. Like it's hard for me to obviously grasp all of that because, and that's the thing. Like people like hear this sort of thing. Even myself, I can reflexively hear certain things, like oh, other dimensions, and I'm talking with beings over here, and this and that, and I can reflexively say ridiculous, But that's the thing. Like you have to keep an open mind. Like that's the thing. Like because we do have a lot of abilities, a lot of powers that we just aren't
Mhm.
tapping into, and for us to just reflexively say that's ridiculous or woo woo, I mean that's basically collapsing, that thing for us, and we're
Yeah,
just going to believe
right.
that we don't have that ability. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's not going to ever
true.
happen. And then guess what? You're not going to really be able to access that potential if you like were to work on that as well. So
Mhm.
it's kind of limiting yourself in a sense. So like even myself, I can be like that, hearing certain things. Like when people talk about ghosts and that, like I'm full in that camp. Like I don't want to work with like a Ouija board or do anything crazy like that because I don't even want to risk it. Like I don't even know it because I know that's more like kind of like baseline. But yeah, it's very very interesting stuff. Um, hey, what's going on, Keith? So this gentleman, I love this guy. Really nice gentleman. Greetings to you as well.
Well,
Thanks for
I
being
would
here.
say, I would say that your intuition is only going to be opened up in the ways that you're available to. It's not going to be, like I don't want to see ghosts in my house because that would freak me out. Like I don't want to see that, so I don't. I see reptiles in my third eye, but I don't want to see them standing there in like full flesh in my bedroom. So, as the more you're open to it, the more you see things. Like I saw a UFO in my bedroom, like a real UFO. And the week before I had asked to see one. I was ready for it. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, it's very very interesting. Yeah, so we're basically got all like questions answered. So for us, like for the viewers, like people that are interested in learning more about you and just seeing a lot more of your content, like where could people find you? And then is there anything exciting for yourself that's upcoming that people can like be tuned into later on?
Well, people can find me on my website. I am RebeccaJoelle.com. I am on Facebook. I'm pretty active over there. They can get a feel for my over there, Rebecca Joelle. And I'm on YouTube, Rebecca Joelle, and I am Medicine Woman on TikTok. And what I'm excited about is the last eclipse on Monday actually fell on my birthday. And for anyone who knows astrology, it was in my 10th house, conjunct my North Node, basically like in my public eye, career, reputation, conjunct destiny. And I felt called to share some videos on TikTok, which they've gone viral. It took a lot of courage to share that information, but it's like the next level of where I think I'm being guided to go. And so I'm going to be sharing more information using my antenna on higher level issues instead of just like my one-on-one sessions. If people have questions about things in the worldview or whatever, what's going on behind the scenes, like truly, what's going on, then I can point my antenna and channel on that and then share kind of Joan of Arc energy.
Interesting. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming on. Really is a pleasure. I'm very glad I was able to like. It's been 6 months, and to have someone like you come on after such a hiatus on my end, it's really like inspiring, and it's a lot of good information. Hopefully, people check out those books. Hopefully, people check out your website and your content, especially on like TikTok. So yeah, thanks so much. If you could please just stay on the line just for a couple minutes afterwards. But
Thank you
yeah,
for having
thank you. Oh, absolutely, absolute pleasure. And then anyone else that's watching now or in the future, very much appreciated. Thank you so much and take care.